welcome to another great edition of Mississippi Stories. I am your host, Marshall Ramsey. I'm editor-at-large and editorial cartoonist right here at Mississippi Today. By the way, before we get started too far into this, I want to say congratulations to Anna Wolf for winning the Pulitzer Prize, which is a pretty darn big, fat, hairy deal, and I'm very proud of her for that and for her great coverage. And to see more great coverage, you can go to MississippiToday.org. It's great, and of course you can see other past episodes of Mississippi Stories. Well, our guest today is a perfect guest for a couple reasons. Number one, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But also, she's all dressed up and fancy today because there is a very important bill signing today about fentanyl test strips. And our guest today, Dr. Katherine Pannel, is, of course, a big reason why it passed. You were a huge advocate the first time it came through and then the second time, and congratulations on that. We'll talk about that. Let me tell you real quick, you're the medical director at Right Track Medical Group, and you are a native of the Delta.
I am.
Inverness. In fact, you had a really fun talk with a group about mental health the other day. I want you to touch on that as well. You're a practicing psychiatrist in North Mississippi since 2010. So congratulations on that. You're certified by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology. And also, you're still a District 3 trustee in the chair?
I am. 2 more years.
2 more years, Mississippi State Medical Association Board of Trustees. I think that's actually where we met.
At a dinner.
At a dinner on that. So it's very good. Huge applause for the fentanyl test strips. I do not understand why that was ever an issue on that, but...
And I think that was what the hardest thing for me was to understand why something that is such a no-brainer was so difficult to get past. But there's just, that stigma and misconception that, if you give these strips to people, it's just going to enable them to continue to use.
Yeah, so the bottom line was they feel more comfortable that
Right.
pill that may not kill them, which it might kill them if they don't have the strips.
Right,
So
and I mean, right now, 6 out of 10 pills are laced with fentanyl, so the odds that it would kill them are actually pretty high.
Yeah. I highly recommend read the book Dear William.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. If you really don't understand the crisis that's going on with our kids and with what's going on with drugs, because literally you can take one drug and your child's dead.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so this is huge. We understand the way it is now. You have to take a little piece of the pill off, you drop it in there, and you stick the strip in,
Right.
and it lets you know if it's got fentanyl.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
So.
And there are some newer strips that are coming out. They're going to make that easier too, because I know that is a little bit of a pain to break off the pill. But there's some new wipes that are coming out that you'll be able to wipe the pill without having to break it down,
Oh, wow.
and it will show the presence of fentanyl.
Yeah, and the big thing about this law is that it'll allow us to get federal funding and it'll be free.
Yes.
Yeah, that's huge.
And even that, they're like, so why are we giving these strips free? That just continues to enable. But what we had to talk to them about and teach them and educate lawmakers about was that this was also, when you go to pick up the strips, you're linked with a social worker or a counselor that'll show you all the places in Mississippi where you can go to get rehab, detox. It just gives you those resources to recover. And sometimes for these users, this is the first time that they've ever received that information.
Yeah.
So.
Boy, isn't that so many things in Mississippi, just make sure that people have the resources.
That's right.
I mean, that's huge. Mental health's the same way.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so the bill signing is today, so you get to go down to the
It
Capitol
is.
and stand there, and the governor will get out, you'll get a pen and all that good stuff.
Right,
so.
right.
But congratulations, because like I
Thank
said,
you.
it seems like every time I turn on the radio or TV, I see you out there being a really strong advocate, and that's a big part of what your belief with what you do, right?
Right. I feel like the strongest advocates have a history of past with either mental health or substance abuse, and I had a father that suffered from both. He had bipolar as well as some substance abuse issues, and I saw the struggles growing up, so that just makes you want to fight harder so that those that are struggling with the same don't have to go through such a difficult path.
Yeah, definitely. It's the book about children's of alcoholics or something like that. I can't remember the name of it. But it's just so amazing how many kids go through childhood trauma and then they end up suffering through the same fate because they don't have the resources or they don't understand what they're dealing with.
That's right. And you just hope that you can be one of those people that maybe stops that cycle, that can help stop the cycle.
Yeah. And I'll be really honest with you, when my parents got ill, my dad ended up with Alzheimer's, my mom had some issues that we had to work through. I went to go see a therapist, and I remember the first time going in the office, I was like trying to hide behind a plant because I didn't want anybody seeing there going, well, Marshall Ramsey, it's about time he comes in here, or whatever joke they want to make about it. but it was the best thing I ever did.
Right.
It's like you don't have any stigma when you go into the cardiologist.
That's exactly right.
Right? You know, it's the same thing. If your brain's not working right, you need somebody to help you get through it.
That's right. I'm still sneaking physicians in through the back door of my office because
Really?
they're so worried that someone will see their doctor, someone they respect and trust, going to get mental health issues. They worry about losing their license, so the stigma is still there and it's still very real.
Yeah, and you would think, and I've got several friends who are doctors and so forth, and what y'all see on a daily basis sometimes, that would probably meet.
Oh yeah, especially coming off of COVID.
Oh, COVID too.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, seriously, and I've got a friend who's was an ICU nurse during that.
I can't even.
He's like, I've seen more people die in the last month than I did in my whole career.
That's right.
You know, so there's and I would say it's safe right now to say that as a nation that we have got a lot of trauma to unpack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And COVID was horrible, but I do think one positive thing about COVID is it did start making us talk more about mental health. It brought it kind of to the forefront because everybody was struggling, even those that are not even in healthcare that are struggling. And so we started talking about it more, and it's kind of just propelled mental health into the spotlight, which is wonderful.
Yeah, don't you feel like that? It's like I think everybody lost something.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, whether it was a job or even an evening out or a friend or a loved one or whatever. And it was just weird because if you bring it up on social media, then everybody be shouting at you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and one thing I've noticed, it seems like kids today have a little more healthy because they need to. They've got a lot of things on their plate too. So is that something that you see that kids are struggling a little bit more?
I do, and they've had to face things that even adults haven't, and the adults don't even know how to handle it, so how are we expecting our children to? And we can't really teach them how to handle it, but this is going to be a really important time to get back to the basics and really start talking more about mental health and making it, less stigmatized and more of the norm, and focusing on coping skills so that, they avoid some of the horrible things that we are now having to deal with.
Yeah, and wasn't there some legislation this year also that passed through that helped provide some help on the front end? So that, number one, because I've always thought it was just horrific that we throw people with mental illness in jails and so forth. So this allows some resources for people to have outpatient care.
Another really exciting piece of legislation that, I could talk forever about it. Sam Creekmore, he's got a family history of mental illness and has just really been like a mental health champion. Yeah. He authored House Bill 1222, which does just that. It makes sure that we have resources in place outpatient so that our people with mental health issues don't end up in jail for several days before receiving treatment. Yeah. That's extremely traumatic, and then it just makes it harder for anybody wanting to go seek treatment. They don't want to end up in jail, so then they just won't go seek it out.
Yeah,
so.
Right, definitely, and it's one of those things that it not only affects the person, but it affects their families and loved ones and everybody else. So this is something that radiates out.
Yes, it addresses all of the issues. Unfortunately, Mississippi was hit with a federal lawsuit that basically said you're putting people in jails and inpatient hospitals. Why isn't your outpatient system sufficient to keep them out there? Yeah. And this addresses all of that. And hopefully we'll build up our outpatient mental health care so that we can avoid jail stays, ER stays, and ultimately reduce inpatient stays.
You think about it, and just even in our lifetime, the difference between the care from, say, just in the last 30 years. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The whole, Southern, anybody that was struggling with the, oh, bless your heart, and they ended up in an institution. You're like, where did they go? But now, thankfully, stigma is lessening, and we are taking care of the patients that are struggling.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, there's been so much between the economy and what's going on with COVID and so forth, too. A lot of people don't really realize it. They're just kind of walking through feeling like they're running through cold molasses.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so on that, too. You gave recently a really good speech. You give mental health talks all the time. You're in front of people. You're not a shy human being. I've discovered that about you.
Not shy, but surprisingly
get
anxious before everything.
But that's normal, and that's good. You can feed off that energy.
No,
but still, that kind of shocks me to hear that a little bit because you're very good at it. But you recently gave a mental health talk in your hometown to a group of older ladies. How did that go, and what did you say to get through to your audience?
So leading up to that, I'd actually given a talk for a national podcast. Yeah. And I can tell you that I was more nervous talking to these people in my hometown. These are the women that watched me fail multiple times. Yeah. They were the ones who caught me toilet papering their trees in their backyard. So they knew.
Yeah, but you were 30 when you did that.
That's right. So they've seen me fail, they've seen me struggle, but they have loved me regardless. And I really could. wrote this in a post. I could have read the newspaper and they were going to be proud and supportive. But I was able to talk to them about some of the things going on mental health wise in Mississippi, and they were just immediate champions for it. Like, they had the best questions. They were fired up and they were ready to go talk about this and ready to start being part of reducing stigma, because every single one of them had been touched by mental illness in some way, whether they lost their husband or they had a grandchild that was struggling. It was amazing to see that every woman in the room could relate to something that I was talking about.
Yeah, one of the things that really, you mentioned losing a grandchild. I mean, you look at teen suicides and the rates and how they've soared. Even I was reading, Rainn Wilson has written a book on spirituality. It's like, okay, Dwight from The Office has written it, but I'm sitting there reading it, but he has some statistics and they're talking about the increase on that, and it's like it's almost tracks with the social media and some of the other pressures that these kids have on them. But I mean, that is a huge crisis, because everybody that I've ever known that's lost a child is broken.
Oh, no doubt.
You know, it's just absolutely, and it's so tough if you're a parent and you think your child may be thinking about that. You have to be very much in their face and talk to them.
Oh, very vigilant, checking their phones. I feel very fortunate that I didn't grow up with social media.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, you think everybody out there is living the perfect life. You don't feel good enough. But I think one of the big things about protecting your mental health is boundaries, and that includes boundaries with social media and watching news, all that. You've got to put boundaries on it, and we as parents, that is our responsibility to put those boundaries. I know I have an almost 13-year-old, and she has been nagging me for months for Snapchat, and it's just not going to happen, because I've seen the things that come out of that. So we have to be there to parent them and protect them, because they're not mature enough to do that.
Yeah, because a lot of times you think that on Snapchat, oh, it's just going to go away, but then they screenshot it.
But that's the scary part, is that I can't see anything she's doing because it goes away. But yes, it is absolute. I mean, it follows you everywhere.
Remember, I mean, numbers like, I'm the same way. I remember getting bullied. I got bullied in 6th grade, right? So I was like 5'0", 130 pounds, and then the next year I was 6'1". So I mean, I had a growth spurt. That turned out really well for me. But that said, when I went home, I wasn't bullied. But now it's like a 24/7 thing, and that's a real issue.
Oh yeah, they bully, and then they put it out on social media that they're doing that, and they recruit others to bully too. So
so it's a tough thing. So kids, so bottom line, that once again, it's important to reduce the stigma, so that parents can feel like their kids can get help. And,
that's right.
And on that too.
Right.
And as parents, you kind of have to be present, to be able to put the oxygen mask on for your passenger.
Yep.
On that too.
I like that reference. That's a good one. Yes.
Well, thanks.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yep. Because they tell you before your flight that put yours on first, but then make sure that you're there to provide that help to your kid too.
That's right. That's right. It's good to get that checkup from the neck up.
That's right.
So on that, okay, a lot of people don't understand the difference between psychiatrist and psychologist.
So psychiatrists, they actually go to medical school.
Yeah,
so I graduated college and I went to medical school, and I did the 4 years of medical school and then 4 additional years of residency to become a psychiatrist. So I can do all the therapy, but I also am able to write medication should that need to be written for.
Right. So. And that's also too, and I think another good metaphor might be, your brain's kind of like a garden. So you can either tend it with a hoe and do work and exercise and make it, or you can use a little bit of fertilizer or weed killer or whatever you need to do to help it as well. So that, medication isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be
and I give I'm not a pill pusher at all. I give my patients the opportunity to do all the things, like work on coping skills, exercise, make schedules, get into therapy.
Yeah.
But there's still, for some, that's not enough, and we really need to make it very apparent that that's okay if it's not enough. You've tried all the things, and there are medications there, because in the end, research shows that medications and therapy, that's the gold standard.
Yeah, so definitely help on that. What advice would you give people right now if they're sitting there watching this and they're thinking, I don't know where to go, I don't know who to turn to? Because it's kind of like with me with my melanoma. Sometimes finding a good dermatologist is tough, but finding a good therapist, and that may be expensive or whatever. What advice would you give somebody?
The good thing about Mississippi is that we have finally seen that there are areas of improvement. We've instilled a 988 system.
Yeah.
There's NAMI. You reach out to those, and they know, they're all knowing. They know all the resources, and they can connect you with what you need.
Yeah, that's awesome. And and it's good to reach out. I was saying too that we've lost kind of, and I think we really felt it during the pandemic, but we lost connection with each other, and I think that's made a big part of it too.
Oh, for sure. Loneliness reaches everything. It worsens depression, anxiety, which in turn affects physical health. That I think there's a recent study that just came out that loneliness is like the #1 risk factor for dementia.
Really?
So,
Wow.
I mean, it touches everything. I know for some with anxiety, like reaching out and being social is hard, but you just got to that social connection is huge. I don't even think we've tapped into seeing how huge it is.
Yeah. I saw one weird statistic, and like I said, I'm a cartoonist, not a doctor, but it was like being lonely is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
For sure.
Yeah, without the cool nicotine. So that's no fun.
No.
Yeah, so we definitely that. Yeah, I know. During the pandemic, it was really weird because I was working from the house like everybody. Well, not everybody, but I was able to do that. And then when I started working back in the office, I started getting texts from my dog saying, "Where are you?"
I love it.
She misses me.
And I love following your dog.
Yeah. She came up here yesterday.
But
so
no,
she
it's
was in
true.
the office.
Even my most introverted patients, like they loved the pandemic in the beginning. They're like, "This is my dream. I don't have to talk to anybody. I can just isolate at home." But even at a certain point, they would come in. They'd be like, "Okay, like I'm kind of tired of it. Like I actually do need a little bit of social stimulation." So, yeah, that social support, that just human contact, it plays a major role. Even with dogs, I mean, human dog, we just need that socialization.
Yeah, and love seems to be a big, and
Absolutely.
not to sound like John Lennon, but love is.
But it's so true, though.
Yeah.
It really is.
It does cure a lot of things.
Absolutely.
On that. What made you want to get into this?
And I will make a long story short. Grew up, I just said, with my father severely mentally ill, dealt with that, got into med school, and people would be like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I don't know what I want to do, but I know I don't want to be a psychiatrist." I've had enough of that.
Yeah.
Did my 2 years of in-classroom work and then started doing my rotations and just didn't feel passionate about anything and really started worrying that I had gotten to all this debt with student loans and maybe I wasn't supposed to be a doctor.
Yeah.
My next last rotation was my psychiatry rotation. And as much as I tried not to love it, I absolutely loved it. I don't know, I just felt like I was able to connect. There was just a different level of empathy that I was able to show patients. And just fell in love with it and have rolled with it and never regretted it since. Every day is more interesting than last, and I can't see myself doing anything else.
And you really seem to enjoy and are good at the advocacy part. And so now that you've gotten the fentanyl strips done, which, by the way, like I said, no telling how many lives that's going to end up saving, and so that's a good thing. What's your next thing?
So I have a dyslexic daughter, and she's severely dyslexic, and trying to find resources for her was painful. Like, it was hard. There weren't any in-school resources. Like, I would have to take her out to do therapy and bring her back. So I'm just trying. There's a different kind of therapist that's trained for dyslexia, but they're starting not to be acknowledged in Mississippi. And she was trained by one of these. They're called CODAs, and has done fabulous. Like, is winning reading awards now.
Yeah.
And I would hate to see those be pushed out of Mississippi because we don't have enough dyslexia therapists.
Yeah.
So I want to advocate and fight to make sure that they stay acknowledged in the state and can continue to do their work because we need them here.
Man, I feel sorry for anything that's ever against you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so on that.
Thank you.
Okay, final thought before we go away. This has been great. I could talk to you for an hour about this.
I know. There's never enough time.
Yeah.
Can I just tell you a real quick story?
Of course.
So when your Candy reached out to me about interviewing with your podcasting with you, I was like super excited, talked to my friends about it, but had gotten my nerves under control, was working on it last night, doing my breathing, really like reading through stuff, preparing. It was ready to roll, and my mom calls this morning on the way over here.
Oh, no.
And she says, "I'm coming to Oxford. Can we do lunch?" I said, "Oh, Mama, I would love to, but I'm in Ridgeland." "What are you doing in Ridgeland?" I was like, "Well, I have an interview with Marshall Ramsey." She's like, "The Marshall Ramsey?" I was like, "Yes, Mom." Like the guy that does the cartoons. I was like, "Yes, Mom." And she's like, "Do you know what a big deal that is?" I was like, "Yes, Mom, I do." And she was just like, "Was he going to draw you in a cartoon?" I was like, "Mama, I don't know. Like, I have to get off this phone call because now my heart is in my throat."
Yeah,
So,
I didn't tell you I do like a Bob Ross segment where I paint you with a big brush. I'll do that.
I'm down for it, but she was so excited, and I felt so cool and calm until I called her, and I was like, "Mom, I'm gonna," or she called me, and I was like, "Mom, I'm gonna have to let you go." Like,
That's funny.
I had it all under control, but she's a big fan, clearly.
Oh, well, I'll make sure I send something back with you for her.
Please do. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so when you walked out, my heart was like literally right here. But
it turned out okay.
It did.
I hope this wasn't too stressful.
No, not at all. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I wish we had more time.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime. But thank you, and
Absolutely.
thank you for, like I said, you're really turning Mississippi, the needle, pushing the needle in the right direction. I forgot how to talk right at the end of the segment. That happens every time.
But I appreciate you
Yeah.
because the more we talk about all of this, the more stigma falls. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, and I don't know about you, but I mean, I get on social media and I just see people screaming past each other, and I realize, maybe we need to talk.
Absolutely.
And next time we'll just talk about Ted Lasso the whole time.
Deal.
We could do a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely, because that is probably the best portrayal of mental
Oh my
health.
gosh, you sat down and just really broke it down. Absolutely.
It's very well done.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hey, and thank you for watching. You can, of course, like I mentioned before, go to MississippiToday.org and find past episodes and all of our great reporting. Oh yeah, and a few of my cartoons too. Y'all have a great week, and we'll see you next time on Mississippi Stories. Thank you for watching this episode of Mississippi Stories. Make sure to subscribe to the Mississippi Today YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified every time a new video uploads.